Welcome to Armchair Expert. I'm Dax Shepard. I'm joined by Monica Padman.
Hello.
This edition of Experts on Expert is a particularly fun one for me.
A live show.
It was a live show, but with a friend, an actual friend from college. Jason DeLeón and I were in an archaeology class together at UCLA some 20 years ago. We had other classes together, but yeah, he and I were best buddies in college, and he has now grown up to be a very impressive anthropologist. He researches theories of violence, materiality, Latin American migration, photoethnography, forensic science, and archaeology of the contemporary. He directs the Undocumented Migration Project, a long-term study of clandestine border crossings that uses a combination of ethnographic, archaeological, visual, and forensic approaches to understand this phenomena in a variety of geographic contexts. He also won the MacArthur Fellowship, which is very esteemed, Monica. Incredibly exclusive. He also has a book right now called The Land of Open Graves. We appropriately recorded this live at UCLA in front of a bunch of students, and it was quite a blast. Little reminder, tomorrow, tickets go on sale for the HistoryCon Armchair Expert Live from Los Angeles at the Pasadena Convention Center. Tickets go on sale at 10 a.m. LA time tomorrow. You can visit www.armchairexpertpod.com for a ticket link. Please enjoy my old drinking buddy, Jason DeLeón.
He's an armchair expert. He's an armchair expert.
Jason, please get comfortable. Brought my hat in case it gets windy. This sign says I helped you get sober. You just made my entire night. 6 months. Congratulations. That's awesome. So, Jason, we have not seen each other. On the way here, I was like, it'll be 20 years coming up that I graduated, which is alarming. And then, so 19 for you.
Yeah. And I think the last time I saw you, you were like, I can't hang out with you anymore. You're too much of an enabler. I'm trying to like do shit with my life, and so we're not good together.
Well, you know, I gave a lot of thought to our past, and I was like, the truth is, I just didn't have your constitution. So you could somehow, DeLeón could drink until 5 a.m., and then he would show up where he had to be at 6 a.m., sweating booze, barely coherent, but he had one of these smiles that'll get you out of prison, and all the professors loved him. They're like, oh, sit over there. I mean, geez, you smell, but we love you. But you just have that constitution, don't you?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay. It's gone away?
Yeah, I wish.
It's gone the way of the dodo?
It kind of has.
Foster's Island principle? Are you blown away?
Starts now.
It starts now.
Bragging.
By the way, I'm also going to be citing a lot of anthro that I've both corrupted in my own memory and is definitely obsolete by now. So prepare to cringe a lot.
I have tenure now. I don't read anything anymore.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Literally, the first question I wanted to ask you was, are you tenured? Because I want to know what stories I can bring up.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're good to go.
Oh, yeah, we're good.
Okay. Yeah. Buckle up. You're from Long Beach, right?
Yep.
That's right, LBC.
Oh, wow.
You and Snoop, two most famous.
Warren G. Sublime.
Oh, yeah, Sublime. But were you raised just by mom?
Yep.
Yeah. When did dad leave? See, it's going to be like that.
Yeah. Well, my parents got divorced in 85, and then so I lived with dad for 3 kind of horrible years, and then I ran away.
Okay, that seems to be the pattern for dads, huh?
Yeah.
Back in the 80s.
Yeah.
What ages did you live with them?
3rd through 5th grade. That's when I started going to therapy, basically. Yeah, literally.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the school psychologist was like, you're here every day. My dad wasn't really around.
Okay.
So I was like a latchkey kid. I spent a lot of time at home alone. And then he worked nights. And so I would be at home by myself until the morning kind of thing.
Now, how old were you when you got interested in punk rock? Because I think that's really what happened. You and I were in a class together. I was like, this guy has a suspicious amount of tattoos for a student here. Now I think they're ubiquitous, but in '99, I think they were still, you were out on a limb a little bit.
A little bit, I think. And I think it was all about intensity, right? Like, how far can we push it? I think people who were pushing things in a certain direction gravitate towards other people who are, either enablers or who are like fuck it, let's do it.
Either iconoclasts or fellow scumbags. One of the two.
Yeah.
What age did you start getting interested in music and playing punk rock?
You know, I started listening like pretty intensely to music probably around 9 or 10 because I was home alone all the time, and my parents had huge record collections, and so I would just play a shit ton of records, and you know, I was into Chuck Berry, Creedence, that kind of stuff, and then puberty hits, and then it was like heavy metal, and then heavy metal leading into like grunge, and then grunge leading me to punk rock. Yeah. So probably seriously getting into music around 14.
Okay, and now you recently posted a picture of yourself in high school, and there's a lot of things going on in the photos. There's a lot of clues to work with to construct an idea of what you were like in high school. First of all, you have a mohawk, but you also have braces.
Yeah.
And so I said, what a mixed message here. It's like, fuck societal norms, and I want my teeth to be straight as hell.
But that picture, I'm also in a tuxedo in that picture.
You sure are.
Because when I was in high school, I went to this really diverse high school, Wilson High School, and people were getting pissed at homecoming. They were like, every year at homecoming, it's a white homecoming king and queen, even though we're like 60% people of color in the school.
Yeah.
So they decided that like my senior year, that they were going to have international ambassadors for every ethnic group.
Oh, wow.
And so they couldn't find someone who was Pacific Islander who had the GPA to do it, and then someone heard that I was half Filipino, and they were like, "Hey, will you come and be
close enough?"
You know,
Wow.
and and I was like, "All right, sure. What do I got? Like, I got to wear a tuxedo. Like, okay, fine."
Well, if again, here we go with my memory, which is probably in error. But weren't all the Pacific Islanders? They did paddle from the Philippines. No, someone in here will be able to correct me. Here's what I remember learning. You're so embarrassed for me.
Yes, I'm so embarrassed.
Okay, here's what I remember learning, which is sure deeply flawed. But the people that colonized that chain of islands, Samoa, Tonga, all that, they didn't sail there, they rode there. And that was a long-ass voyage. So they did basically an artificial natural selection where they picked all the biggest, heaviest guys that could row for a very long time and have some fat reserves, and they deployed them. And that's why Samoans are so big. That's what I learned.
Which is that you just told the Moana story, I think.
Oh my God, you're right. That's where I got that from. So, anyways, I'm just saying you were on terra firma with this claim of being a Pacific Islander. You're like the original Pacific Islander.
But I grew
up. It's
up.
not true. Did someone say? It's not true. Malaysia? We do agree they rode to Tonga. No? Okay, whatever. Monica will fact check this. So they needed someone who could represent the Pacific.
But my problem was I grew up, so I was a military brat. I lived all over the world, and I was always like the only brown student. And people would be like, well, what are you? And I would say, well, my dad's Mexican, my mom's Filipino, my mom says I'm Mexipino. And people would say, like, that's not a real fucking thing. You're brown, you've got a last name, De León, you're Mexican. So I was like, it was kind of forced on me for a long time. And so by the time someone asked me in high school, like, oh yeah, you also have Filipino. And I was like, well, yeah, but nobody seems to recognize that until right now. And now I got to take a goddamn picture to, I love my Filipino roots, but I feel like I grew up in South Texas too, so I spent a lot of time around people who were like, what the hell's the Philippines?
Yeah. They didn't know about them rowing anywhere.
No.
Like I did.
Nobody does.
Yeah, nobody. Apparently nobody does. But so you ended up being like a prom king or a squire or something, right?
Some shit like that, yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty impressive. So can I ask you, having spent time in Texas and whatnot, was it a relief to land in Long Beach? Did you feel like, there's a much bigger Latino contingent in Long Beach than, say, Michigan or other parts of the country, right? Was it at all like, okay?
Growing up in Long Beach, it really got me like, I thought the world was that diverse. You always had a Cambodian friend and a Samoan friend. It was a huge gay community when I was growing up. So all that stuff I thought was just totally normal. Right. And it wasn't until like I went on tour as a teenager, like the Deep South, and being like, oh shit, it's actually, the world doesn't look like Long Beach. But I think, growing up there really kind of clued me into diversity in a way that I wouldn't have gotten in especially even in other parts of LA. Yeah,
totally.
Oh, people think I'm the gardener where I live. I mean, I'm always like, so yeah. Or like, there's like few people of color where I live in my neighborhood, and so I always think like, you see like an African American person, like, oh, he must be either a hip hop artist or an athlete.
Oh, sure.
When they see me, I'm not sure what they think. I'm either the gardener, because I see lots of brown people in my neighborhood. They're gardening, or cleaning the pool, and then I always wonder what people think it is that I'm doing.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I am back in when I used to be unevolved and a stereotyper. I'm trying to think what I would.
Back when?
Rodeo star?
Yeah, rodeo star.
Huge rodeo star?
Jockey.
famous jockey. So you get into punk rock, and here's why I bring up punk rock, because I'm wondering why you majored in anthropology. Like, did you come here, first of all, did you come from high school straight here?
Yeah.
Okay, so you had much better grades in high school than I did.
Yeah.
I could have never got in here. Although I think I graduated with higher honors than you. So whatever,
did,
it was all sorted out in the end.
It's true.
I guess I just needed to be challenged. And, did you come here knowing you were going to major in anthro?
Yep. I was a declared anthro major.
Oh, really?
And I lasted like 5 weeks, and I dropped out and went home and lived in my mom's garage.
Oh, you came and then left?
Oh, yeah. Twice.
Twice?
Yeah.
I didn't realize they had like a sabbatical policy.
Oh, my God.
Is it like Stanford? You can just skip out for a long time
And then
come
just
back?
pay some money. And it's just,
Yeah.
You know. No, I lasted 5 weeks. I failed intro to archaeology.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Well, this is an encouraging story.
Yeah, it is.
All of you could have a MacArthur grant at some point. Why'd you want to do anthro?
Because I wanted to be an archaeologist.
You did?
Yeah. I
But
was
based
like-
on Indiana Jones?
Oh, yeah. Indiana Jones.
That has to be responsible for a significant percentage of archaeology majors.
Absolutely.
Yeah?
My generation, our generation, people, I mean, that was
Yeah.
our kind of first exposure to the discipline.
Yeah, because there's no Star Wars degree. You
Right.
can't
No.
be Han Solo or something. So that's off the table. So you go next to, okay, be Indiana Jones. I think what really drew me to it was as someone who was obsessed with the punk rock scene, who was questioning like, oh, all this stuff we're inheriting. Like, do we have to do this stuff? Is this like, does everyone do this? All these rules and customs I'm just kind of inheriting from my family and my town. Is that the only option? And I think maybe having this intro class where I was like, oh no, there's a bazillion ways to live on planet Earth. And that is so encouraging to me. And I think it was it stemmed out of my skepticism about our own culture in some way. But now I find out we don't share that at all in common.
But I say we do share that because I came in, I wanted to be an archaeologist, I wanted to be Indiana Jones, and then I realized how fucking boring archaeology is.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I love it. Someone who has a PhD in archaeology, but it was not what I wanted to kind of do.
Yeah.
But I really got excited about cultural anthropology as a student at UCLA because we were in that class with Connerly Casey.
The witchcraft one?
Either witchcraft or genocide or deviance and abnormality. One of those.
Yeah.
And that one, I was like, well, shit. Like,
Now we're talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think we really bonded over that.
Well, I say this all the time. The teacher had been possessed by a spirit at some point in sub-Saharan Africa, which prior to me hearing that, I'd be like, there's no such thing. I don't know what to tell you. But here's this person I trusted truly. I loved her. And I believed that her experience was such that she got possessed by a spirit and then was a shaman, relieved her of that ailment, if I recall.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, that's the power of culture, because she entered that not necessarily believing in it in herself, and then all of a sudden it was real.
Yeah.
I find that very fascinating.
That was an amazing class.
So when we met in... maybe we didn't meet there, but when we had that archaeology class, so we went and dug up at Stunt Ranch, and I had the fantasy that we were going to explore with like dynamite and pickaxes. I thought for sure within a week or two we'd discover the Jade Mask or a hidden city or something. And
We didn't find shit.
we didn't find a thing. And more than that, you start to know something stinks when you get there and they hand you a paintbrush. And you're like, what the hell am I going to do with a paintbrush? And like, well, you're going to go down 2 centimeters and make in situ readings of everything. And I was like, this can't be archaeology. It was a real big wake-up call for me.
Yeah.
I was like, this is off the table.
Yeah.
And then our obsession during that class was we had been taught that the Chumash used to use man root
Oh, yes.
to stupefy the fish in small streams
Yep.
because it too is an hallucinogenic. And Delion and I spent a good portion of our time searching for man root at Stunt, Stunt Ranch.
And asking questions like, so if one were to take this in a tea, what would be and Tom Wake was like, you guys are going to kill yourselves. This is poison. And we're
like, what's the average dose for a Chumash? Like to see some shit but not meet God? What is that?
if you're like 5'9", what's the dosage? Or 6'2".
Yeah. But boy, have so much fun up there. My obsession during that dig was we came across a rattlesnake at one point. Remember that walking through the field? Some gal was like, ah! Yep. And once that happened, I was like, oh, I better take this mountain lion, warnings serious because we've already come across a rattlesnake. And so a good chunk of my day was practicing my defense against a mountain lion. It was offer the bait and then trawl to the neck. It was like, boom, grab it, and then boom. I didn't learn anything about archaeology in that whole time. It was just mountain lions, man root, rattlesnakes. And then often the class was on Friday, and we were up there for, I think, like 4 hours.
No, a whole day.
The whole day, okay.
Yeah.
Then we go down to the Saddle Ranch bar down there in Calabasas and just unwind from a long day of digging.
Yeah.
Now, we parted ways in 2000. I graduated with a little bit better of a GPA than you managed.
Yeah.
And
but I will say, too, that one of the things we also bonded over was you telling me, you were like, I never had the college experience. I transferred from community college. I never had a college buddy.
I didn't have
And so you were really committed to like having a college buddy.
Extremely committed.
And so I was there for you for that.
And it happened at the perfect time. It was my last semester at UCLA, and then I met you and Alex, and we were making
condensed
up for
4 years into a quarter.
Made up for lost time. Oh, that was the highlight. Now, we parted ways, and then you, again, I wonder if in that moment, I think if you'd asked any of our classmates, who here will be employed at some point later down the road, we're definitely numbers like 30 and 31 for the guess, right? Very unlikely. And over the years, I guess I would follow you on like the rudimentary versions of social media or whatnot, and I go, oh, that's cool, he's going to graduate school. And then, of course, you ended up going to Penn State and getting you went to Penn State and then got a PhD in archaeology, and I remember being so excited for you and just thinking, God, he did it. He did it. Did you blow your own mind with having seen that all the way through, especially if you had quit? Why did you quit the first time?
I wanted to be in a band.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to play music.
Yeah.
And I didn't like my classes, too. I mean, they weren't kind of inspiring at the time, I think.
Yeah.
And so I needed to go on a vision quest to come back.
I just want to say, I'm on the record as being a recovering addict. I've been to a few crack houses in my life. I have never been to a place as dirty as Jason's house that he lived in with his band.
In Westwood.
Yeah. I also want to mention that today I was reading about you. I was like, what was the name of his band? And then even though I knew the name of the band back then, I didn't put together the cleverness of it till just today. The band was called Euthanasia.
I love
Euthanasia.
it. Yeah, that's great.
20 years later, I got it. I took it at face value.
Is it spelled
Young people
in Asia?
Paddling.
East of Pakistan.
Yeah.
Everyone's included.
Yeah, sure.
Few 100 million youths in Asia.
I like it.
Now I'm going to transition to some serious stuff because I actually, although I'm quite aware of what you've done, I'm not entirely aware of what you've done. Before I even get into it, when I knew we would talk about it, I thought, do you find it hard to have an apolitical conversation about what you study when you're talking about migration or emigration or immigration? I think as soon as Americans hear the word immigration, they immediately connect to a party. Unlike if you made some discovery of bird feathers from the Jurassic period on a dinosaur, you don't go like, oh, Ronald Reagan. Well, that's some Obama data right there. Yeah. You don't have any association with other data like that. So I'm just wondering, I'm curious how just even deciding to study this has been either mired in politics or even when you want to present your findings, trying to escape that lens. Or is it baked in, and should it be seen as a political endeavor?
Well, I think in the beginning I thought about it as an apolitical endeavor. I was like, I'm an archaeologist, I'm an anthropologist, I'm studying this thing from a scientific perspective, and I'm doing it from a kind of apolitical stance. I'm doing it just to document and to better understand. And I remember the first time I said that to a colleague of my friend of mine, and she said to me, wow, you're so full of shit. That must make you feel better and sleep at night by thinking that this is kind of an apolitical endeavor. And I had to kind of get up to speed about all anthropology is political, right? The decisions that you make to study something, that's a political decision. Even if you decide to study something like what we ate in the past, 5,000 years ago, I think that's a political decision.
How so?
Because you're choosing to either engage or not engage with certain topics. So, people who study like subsistence in the past, how that relates to something like inequality, right? So not everybody ate equal food in the past. So even when it's not kind of up front, I think it's still all very much political. The rabbit holes we go down, I think, tell a lot about our own politics.
Well, let's just start with the fact that you are half Mexican, half Filipino. Was that part of why you were even interested in that? Like, what was the spark that you were like, that's... Because if you remember, if I was going to pursue anthropology, it was just going to be to live with the Hells Angels. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
I wanted to do an ethnography on the Hells Angels for obvious reasons.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm wondering, I guess your own background, did that play into it, or did something else spark your interest in it?
No, I think what really sparked it was working in Mexico on archaeological excavations, where I'm out in the middle of nowhere with working class women and men who are getting paid to dig ditches alongside these archaeologists, and I start hearing their stories about migration and about border crossings and the horrible things that had happened to them. It was those stories that really kind of inspired me, thinking like, I've become very close with this individual. He's just told me a horrible story about what has happened to him, and I want to better understand that. And so initially it was that interest in those folks. But I mean, I think my own background allows me certain access to particular types of people and particular types of stories.
Yeah.
But it was the first time, I think, within academia, being a brown person was always, considered to be, not an asset. It's like something to kind of an impediment to overcome.
Sure.
I'm like happy just to be at the table kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it wasn't when I realized like, oh, well, my own background allows me a certain type of access. Then it started to feel really empowering. And then all of a sudden I wasn't having to explain away my background, but really to say, I want to write about immigration and about border crossings, and I have a personal connection to these issues, which then I think facilitates the work.
Yeah.
But I didn't start out like, oh, I'm like, because if you remember, I was a super apolitical person.
Yeah.
As a student.
And I guess the reason I even bring up the apolitical thing is because, unfortunately, currently at least, soon as something is under the paradigm or left or right, that means you immediately lose 50% of the ears.
Yeah.
And so therein lies the trouble. Like,
Sure.
I fear that you could have some breakthrough discovery and then it would fall mute on half of the population because it is framed as a political thing. But I also recognize it's a cop-out to say it's not a political thing.
Sure.
So we'll see both sides.
And I really am trying to I'm not trying to preach to the choir. I have sort of no interest in that. So, through all the different kinds of public outreach sorts of things that we're doing, the exhibition work, documentary film, trying to write more accessibly, trying to write stories they're about migrants, they're about immigration, but they're really leading with the stories about individuals. So people can pick it up and go, well, do I connect with this character who happens to be a migrant, happens to be an immigrant? That's sort of my approach. And there are some people who you mention immigration, and then there's nothing you can do to connect with those folks.
Right. The wall goes immediately up, but figuratively and metaphorically.
Yeah.
No wall joke. No, no one likes it. It was too much. How was looking at this critical issue through the archaeological lens different from how it had been looked at through other disciplines or in the media?
Most archaeology, right? When you hear the word archaeology, people think about 10,000 years ago, 5,000 years ago. Mm-hmm. And there have been very few projects that were looking at contemporary materials. But as far as I'm concerned, archaeologist means a study of the past through material remains. But the past could be this morning, last week. It doesn't have to be 5,000 years ago. And so when I started thinking about the things that border crossers leave behind and how I can use archaeology to understand that seemed to me like a natural kind of part of this whole thing. But people were like, what the hell is this? And either arguing that's not archaeology or, oh shit, maybe this actually is an interesting way to kind of think about the relevance of archaeology to contemporary kinds of issues.
So what were the first steps? Like you start what? You go down there and you start just walking the route that people walk and finding things? Like what?
Yeah, basically.
That's where it starts.
I make some phone calls. I'm trying to get down to Arizona. I was looking at stuff on the internet, and most of what I was finding on the internet were people who were talking about, migrant trash in the desert. Look at these kind of filthy invaders kind of thing. Yeah. And so I started looking at these pictures of water bottles and backpacks.
They're conveniently environmentalists in that moment.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly, suddenly it's like, Sierra Club. But I was like, oh, shit, there's all this stuff out there. So I started making phone calls, found this guy named Bob Key, who does a lot of humanitarian work in the desert, and felt sorry for me and said, I'll take you out in the desert and show you some stuff. Uh-huh. And I went out, started walking around the desert and just seeing all this stuff and was like, well, this is archaeology. Let's just document it. Let's get the map out. Let's start bagging stuff and tagging it and collecting it and seeing what we can do from an archaeological lens.
Yeah. And so as you start compiling all this and mapping it, are you finding certain things that you realize like, oh, this is more profound than a water bottle, or this is a real glimpse into what the experience is like?
You see different kinds of things. I think there's the personal stuff, right? The Bible, the love letters, the baby stuff that's always like really difficult. But
like dolls?
Oh yeah, diaper bags, that kind of stuff. Baby shoes. You'll see things like a pair of baby shoes with something written on it. Someone saying goodbye to this kid who's getting ready to migrate, kind of thing. Those initially were like the most powerful kinds of things. But then after a while, all the water bottles. I mean, those things really hit me because that someone was relying on this 1 gallon of water to survive. And I have a deep appreciation for all the materials now. I mean, not just the stuff that hits you emotionally, but I think everything, the food wrappers, the broken shoes, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And when you're out there, are you running into like these guys who have armed themselves and are like on the border? Are you running into them?
Not so much.
No.
When I was working on the archaeological stuff, because that project really ran till about 2016, 2017. The place where I was working, there were not a lot of vigilantes out there. Part of it because the place that I was working, vigilantes had killed a 9-year-old girl and her dad, like the year I started working on this project. And so they had been kind of persona non grata in this region. But post 2016, I mean, they're sort of back in the area where I work.
So when did it start? What year did you start going?
2009.
So, and as you are, does any kind of pattern emerge? Is there any kind of insight you gather by looking at it that way and documenting all the stuff? Like, does something become obvious to you that we're all missing?
You start to see how things evolve over time, like the types of technologies people are using. So, like initially, people were using white water bottles, and then they realize, oh, well, the white reflects a lot of light. It's easy to be spotted by the Border Patrol. So then they start painting it with a marker, or covering it with a black trash bag. And then some enterprising person in northern Mexico says, let's make black water bottles to sell to these migrants. And so you can kind of see this stuff over the course of just a couple of years.
Yeah.
And these are patterns that I would ask migrants about, and they had no idea. I would say, oh, the black water bottle, when did those show up? And they would say, oh, we've always had them.
Yeah,
and I'd be like, well, they weren't here last year, kind of thing. So
Yeah.
you would see kind of that. You would see also larger patterns of like, you can see the experience that people have based on the archaeological record over space. So close to the border, what are you throwing down? What are you leaving behind? 25 miles north, what does this stuff look like, right? So things are bloodier, things are broken, people are exhausted, they're losing their clothes because they can't carry it anymore. So you're able to see kind of certain patterns like that through the archaeological remains.
And would you ever go deep into Mexico? Like,
So, 50% of my time is spent with migrants, interviewing them about their experiences, giving them cameras, having them photograph their experiences en route, and then send me the photos, that kind of stuff.
oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
So how much of that have you gathered? Just
Oh, a lot.
Really?
I mean, that's primarily what I do. Is that
You
is working with living people
and give them the tools which to.
as much as I can. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more live show after this exciting commercial break. How do you deal with, I have to imagine, inevitably, you meet someone down there, you give them this tool, you're going to somehow connect and get that thing. I would compare it, I guess, to my mom working in foster care, which is like, it has to be painful to not be, you don't have the bandwidth or capacity probably to help all the people you've connected with. Like, what is that part of the job like?
That's the hardest part.
Yeah.
I was asked the other day, like, what is it that drives kind of this work? And I think for me, it's the connections I make with people that I'm working with, like this deep commitment. And this is part of like maybe coming from a broken home, maybe not having a lot of family, where I've looked towards anthropology as a way to create, kinship. Mm-hmm. And so I think I'm always trying to create kinship with these people that I work with. And it's really difficult to love someone and be committed to them and then to be like, okay, have fun in the desert, send me these photos kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's a really brutal part of the process.
Or if they then make it here, don't you feel kind of obligated to like help in some way once they're here?
Oh, I mean, I'm connected to all the folks I really write about. Even after the first book came out, I'm still really connected to them and, helping out. And, I have one of the guys I write about in the first book who I call Memo. I joke that he's on the MacArthur health plan because that money is paying for a lot of his medical bills.
Uh-huh.
And so, there's long commitment. And that book came out 5 years ago.
Yeah. I think
one of the reasons the topic in general is so daunting is like these Bloom empathy experiments where it's like you look at one kid and you're very willing to help, a photo of one kid in need. You had like a sister or a brother, and it kind of goes down a little bit. And then it gets into this predictable pattern where it's like you had 50 kids and people are like, I don't know, man, I'm out.
No.
Like, so what is the scale of the people heading north?
I mean, it's too many to count. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of people yearly, especially now coming from Central America. So I'm working on a project right now. For the last 5 years, I've been working with smugglers. So
what I would call a coyote, is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so people who are kind of on the edge, fringe kind of characters, not really sympathetic characters because they're doing all kinds of horrible stuff.
Yeah.
They live really short lives because they're wrapped up in all kinds of violence. And I've been really committed to those guys, this other population that nobody cares about. Yet I've connected to some of these folks in I think really deep ways, and then now trying to write about them in a way that gets people to care about that human cost, which is even more challenging. I mean, it's easy for most. I mean, I think you can make a sympathetic character sketch out of a migrant, but with people who are smuggling, it's a lot harder. And so part of what I'm trying to do really is to paint a human picture from that component of this. But people have a hard enough time feeling bad for babies in cages, and so now making this leap towards these.
The guy's profiting
Yeah.
in some manner from that.
Yeah.
Do you see, having now done this for 16 years or whatever, are there things that could be done? Because I guess from the outside, and I'll probably put my foot in my mouth, but it seems like there's a lot of sides to the equation. It's like, one, you have countries that people want to leave. So how do you fix that? I guess I'm curious, what should we be doing differently, and what are some of the solutions?
I think we need a really big, beautiful wall. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. And I'll probably be quoted out of context on that one.
Gilded in gold and with marble.
I think I had a British journalist ask me once, like, and I won't do my terrible. I think yours might be worse than mine. But
how dare you?
I won't do a British accent.
How dare you?
But she asked me once, like, how would you fix this problem? What's comprehensive immigration reform look like? And I said, well, you've got to stop meddling with Central American political systems. The U.S. interventionist policies have totally screwed over Central America for decades. You've also got to stop.
Give me a couple examples of those.
I mean, we put people in power in Central America that are going to kind of toe the line for the United States.
Yeah.
And we consistently undermine kind of grassroots people kinds of political
democratic process.
Yeah. And we've been doing that for forever, and we're really good at it. But so the kind of consistent undermining of Mexico's economy. I mean, this idea that NAFTA was somehow a really bad deal for the United States. NAFTA was a really great deal for certain capitalists in the United States, and really screwed over Mexico in a lot of ways, forcing people to have to migrate. And of course we want them here because we'll pay them less money for work. All those kinds of things I think need to be fixed as part of immigration reform. But this journalist was like, well, don't you think those are like those countries' problems? And I think a lot of Americans think that's also the case, like that Mexico is corrupt, it's having all these issues, Central America is having all these issues, and we think about it as, oh, well, we've got to put this wall up to kind of solve these problems, even though we know that those problems are directly connected to the things that we do. And it's just an unpopular perspective for a lot of folks. I mean, I was at a Trump rally in Warren, Michigan in 2016. People are chanting "Build a wall" before he even comes out. He comes out and
it's
says,
kind of like yelling "Freebird" at a Skinner concert. Yeah.
Except it goes on for an hour. And he comes out and says, "We're going to build this wall, and it's going to save your jobs." And I'm like, people
are robots crossing the border?
Yeah, right.
Oh my God, I want to see that.
But and he said something like, "We're going to stop Mexico from stealing your jobs," and I'm like, as if Mexico is this powerhouse that just says, "You know what? We need some more work for us, so give us these plants." And it's like, no. But people have to see those connections, I think, to better understand what comprehensive immigration reform would actually look like.
Okay, so I'm gonna be forced to take some of the positions I don't hold, but I'm just gonna bring up some concerns. So I think people are nervous that if it were just like, everyone come, that somehow we would be completely buried in a bazillion people that we don't have services to help, and that is a fear.
You're getting people who are coming here to do jobs that.
I always think we're getting the best of the best. Like, I don't have it in me. I don't want to work that bad.
Yeah.
No. I'm the one you don't want in this country. I wouldn't fucking walk home to Los Feliz for a job.
Yeah. So, I mean, nobody, I think, is saying open borders, let everybody come, right? People are talking about, if you want labor,
Yeah.
which we do, then let's treat people with respect and allow them some dignity and be able to move freely,
Yeah.
monitor them, pay them a fair wage. Because we're not gonna have people who are gonna want to work a lot of these jobs. And it's prohibitively expensive for us to hire Americans to pluck chickens or to, render cows. That kind of stuff.
Meat processing.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that we have to understand that.
Well, there does seem to be a willful ignoring of how much of our economy is on the back of those laborers, right?
Yeah.
Didn't Mississippi take some crazy stance at one point where they were trying to get rid of
Well, Alabama had HB 56,
Alabama?
and that one they were.
And it just totally backfired,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I mean-
I love that. So
yeah.
tell people about that, because I think people don't recognize, like anyone who's screaming this, we're in California, which is the fifth biggest economy in the world. Like it's on the backs of a lot of those people where clearly that's a huge part of the economy
Oh, for
that
sure.
is thriving. So what happened in Alabama?
They started policing these farms and these fields, and people were running away because they were afraid of getting deported. And then now you have all of these white farmers being like, who's going to pick all this fruit? Fruit rotting on the vines. I mean, farms just ceasing to function.
Yeah.
And then struggling that, okay, the law goes away, and how do we bring these folks back?
Right, they had to do a 180,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's pretty embarrassing.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Hey, Mexico, boy, we did not think this through.
Because they're like, oh, we're going to hire high school kids to work the fields. Like, yeah, right. I mean,
I was the last generation of kids who worked in fields. I tasseled corn in Indiana, and this was in '87, and the transition was happening. Like school buses would arrive, and there'd be a bunch of us young white kids and hillbillies, really, and then another bus of migrant laborers, and then as the years went on, now there's no white kids on buses doing that job. Yeah. I think they make videos on YouTube for an occupation now. I think that's what they transitioned into. I guess my argument I try to make is like, wouldn't it be cheaper if it's the fiscal concern people have, knowing the cost of patrolling the border and all this stuff? Wouldn't it be fiscally responsible to try to help in those situations so people weren't feeling the need to leave under threat of violence?
you would think.
Yeah, it seems cheaper.
And we keep cutting aid to these countries, saying, stop coming, we're going to cut off your aid. And it's like, well, shit, now you've just destabilized these countries even more. Of course, people are going to be leaving in higher numbers.
Yeah.
But you also have to keep in mind that the border industrial complex is a huge moneymaker. And so these trillions of dollars that are getting spent, people are putting that in their pockets. And so there are people who like to keep the system kind of in place the way that it is.
Yeah. A lot of people are profiting.
Oh, yeah, because the war on drugs has become unpopular. So now the war on immigrants, detention centers, border security, that's a huge, huge moneymaker for a lot of people.
Yeah. Have you been threatened at all?
Like the hate mail, that kind
A
of stuff.
little light hate mail?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The creepy ones are when they write you a physical letter.
Oh,
yeah, that's
If someone writes you a letter, period, it's
You're
scary.
like, yeah.
Why have you time traveled?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? Now, the Undocumented Migrant Project, do you have friends you want to give shouts out to that helped you?
Yeah, well, my team is here. Austin Shipman, who is our project manager, and then Nicole Smith, Michigander, former student of mine from University of Michigan who moved to LA to work on the project.
Good folks. Yeah.
And then Gabe Cantor Angelino, who was also a Michigan student who moved back to LA to work on this project with me.
So the express goal is a long-term anthropological study of clandestine migration between Latin America and the United States that uses a combination of ethnographic, visual, archaeological, and forensic approaches to understand this violent social process. So we touched on the archaeological aspect. What's the forensic aspect?
Trying to understand what happens to migrants who die out in the Arizona desert, because people are dying in the middle of nowhere, and we struggle to get a good count on those because people aren't recovering the bodies. When we began the project, we didn't know really how long it took for a body to decompose, and so we started running forensic experiments using pigs as proxies for human bodies. So we dress them up in clothes that migrants would wear, we put them in different contexts, and then monitor them with trail cameras to see, okay, when do scavengers show up, how quickly do bodies get ripped apart, that kind of stuff.
How fast is that?
In some instances, under 36 hours from fully fleshed to completely skeletonized and ripped apart and scattered away. Oh, yeah.
A full pig?
A full pig, a 200-pound pig.
Wow. 36 hours.
Yeah.
So do people know how many people are dying in the desert?
We have a count from bodies that are recovered by hikers and humanitarian groups, but I think it grossly underestimates the number of actual deaths. So we're doing an exhibition right now a global exhibition called Hostile Terrain 94 that will launch in May in 150 locations around the globe. And it's focused on migrant death. And the exhibition is a giant wall map of Arizona with about 3,200 handwritten toe tags for deceased people. So 3,200 is the working number. By the time we launch in May, it'll probably be around 3,400. But that's just for Arizona, and I think you can safely double that number for just Arizona alone.
Oh my God.
And over 1,200 of those bodies are unidentified. So just fragments of bone.
Oh.
How
I
do
don't
you
know how you do-
decompress? Yeah, this is so
Yeah.
intense.
I'm worried about you.
We're worried.
I was really excited for you and all your accomplishments, and now I'm worried about you.
You know, I used to say that beer helped, and it really doesn't.
No.
Like you want it to, but it stops working after a while.
Yeah.
But I think for us, it's a lot of talk therapy, checking in with folks, and much of this project, I mean, at least the forensic stuff, came out of. I encountered the body of a 31-year-old mother of 3 from Ecuador in the Arizona desert in 2012. A woman named Maricela Zaguipuyas. She'd only been dead like 4 or 5 days. And it was just a devastating kind of encounter. And then I ended up figuring out who she was through the help of a medical examiner in Tucson and a center called the Colibri Center for Human Rights. And then I trace her story back to Ecuador. I meet her family, her kids. I go to New York and meet her family there. And it's kind of her story that really kind of inspires me to kind of keep going and to think, okay, this is rough work. It's emotionally difficult, but at the same time, I'm incredibly privileged to do this. I get paid to do this for a living, and I chose to do this. And so I've got to find ways for it to be productive, but then also to practice kind of self-care. But I think about her a lot in terms of why this project needs to keep going and why I've got to be better at both taking care of myself, but then also making sure that, that the work is getting out there.
Yeah, because I have to imagine, you're in a hostile environment yourself. It's not like you're going back to the Four Seasons, hopping in the bathtub and watching some, I don't know, Tour de France or something.
Why would I be watching the Tour
I have
de
no
France?
idea. Sometimes you get in the bathtub and you'll watch whatever's on, and sometimes it's the Tour de France. But you yourself are in an unforgiving situation, and then you're just kind of left with that nightly, and I think that has to be crazy challenging.
Yeah. And during the course of this project, I mean, another person in my book I write about is this woman, Maricela's 15-year-old cousin, who disappears in the desert. And so I end up spending all this time with his family and working with parents of people who've lost a son and have never recovered him. This project was happening right around the time that my wife gave birth to our first kid. And so becoming a dad during all this really changed my whole perspective on this stuff. And I think it both made me feel more aware about how I was feeling about this stuff, but then also, incredibly inspiring to just kind of keep going.
I was going to ask that. Yeah, having had a child has to have really, because as much as you intellectually understand, of course, people care about their children and stuff, until you have a child and then you imagine them separated from you.
Yeah.
Just immediately you're like, I'm so scared for them.
Yeah.
They depend on me so much, and to be separated, I just can't imagine anything more horrific for them. So you can know it intellectually, but then you have the emotional component of being able to truly understand what kind of pain that would be. I have to imagine it changed your whole experience.
I mean, the most brutal thing I've ever, and I've this project, with the smuggling project that I'm writing a book about now, one of the main people, he was murdered by someone right in the middle of field work, and that was so devastating. And there's been other stuff that's happened that's been really challenging and painful, but nothing compares to interviewing a mom and a dad about their son who has disappeared, and the everyday struggles about if they're ever going to know what happened to him. And when I give talks about the book, I hate giving talks about the first book because that's kind of how it ends. And I always kind of end the talk with this quote from the dad talking about, what life like is now in this perpetual state of grief and limbo, looking for his missing son. And it just breaks my heart every single time. And so, and that's just from an outside perspective.
Yeah.
I cannot even begin to imagine what that daily existence is like.
And what now with the kids in cages? How many? My wife's very involved in this. How many kids are separated? It's
Thousands,
right?
Yeah.
It would appear at least that they had no intention of keeping track of anyone. I mean, they're just, when you look at what level of attention was given to just keeping track of everyone, it doesn't seem that there was any.
No, and I don't. Part of it's just incompetence. federal agency that just does not kind of thinking into the future, just doing stuff kind of willy-nilly. But then, you have to wonder too if part of the negligence is just part of this brutality of this system that's in place.
Do you have any empathy for those people that are doing that job? Because I only mention this because I was watching some special on it, and they were following a Border Patrol officer, and he was responding to a call that I think was on the Rio Grande or something. So he's driving down this dirt road, and he's just passing people after, person after person, sometimes families, and they're knocking on his window and they want water. And you start realizing quickly, well, this guy can't stop and pick everyone up. He's responding to this call down here, and he's going to pass 6 families on the way that he knows just the vehicle's not going to hold this many people. What a fucking terrible job. I can only imagine what mechanisms you have to enact for that not to kill you, to pass 6 families on your way to pick up some other thing. So is it possible for you to have empathy for the people that are on that side of it?
Sure. I mean, I've worked with the Border Patrol off and on for many years, and people don't really know that over 50% of agents are Latino. And so you've got a lot of people who are sort of struggling with their own identity in the context of, policing people who look just like them. And a lot of the agents that I've talked to have said things like, I joined the Border Patrol after 9/11 because I wanted to fight terrorism, and now I'm just chasing dirt farmers from Oaxaca across the desert. That wasn't really what I signed up for. And so I think there were a lot of people who had been sold that. I mean, and around after 2001, the federal government starts conflating terrorism with immigration, and putting those two things together. And so you have a lot of agents who I think really bought into that, and then come to find out that we've never caught a terrorist coming across the southern border ever.
Not one.
But you have these agents who are, I think a lot of them are struggling with these kind of internal conflicts. I mean, there are some that I've met who I thought were going to kill me, who were, gun in my face kind of stuff, just aggressive sorts of people. But I think there's a lot of other folks that I've come to know who are complicated creatures.
Have you been mistaken for someone walking?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had that happen. I've people think I was a smuggler, get pulled over for various reasons.
Yeah, you look way more like a smuggler to me than a farmer.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I just had to quickly thin slice and profile you, I'd be like,
deported gangbanger.
this guy loves metal.
Yeah.
This guy's the same MS-13 for sure.
Yeah.
Look at him. Okay. Now, so you're kind of, I wonder, at some point, do you foresee the archaeological component fading away as you take more of a policy advisement role? Or do they always, I'm wondering how, from when you set out on this project till now, how it has evolved and where you see it going?
I don't do a lot of policy work because people don't like taking advice from anthropologists.
Why not?
Because I think we make everything way too complicated. Right? Because someone asks you a simple question like, you asked me this immigration question. I'm like, I could give you a 42 bullet point kind of response to this, and policymakers are like, well, that doesn't.
Yeah, I need a headline, buddy.
So
I
I avoid a lot of the policy stuff. But as the project has evolved, I mean, it really is a lot more about public outreach. I'm committed to training students to do research on this kind of stuff. We're currently trying to start a center at UCLA that will basically work with first-generation college students to do work around these issues, and then put them out into the world to do various research projects. But then also trying to translate all of that for different publics.
So with the new project that's going to go live globally, is the goal to get more people both interested and then also volunteering? Should people be helping people in the desert? What would?
So this project, the Hostile Terrain, we send them an exhibition kit that's 3,200 toe tags and all the information that needs to go on those toe tags. And then they have to mobilize, 100, 500 people to make these exhibitions. And so for me, there's something that happens, rather than going to an exhibition space and seeing a wall of 3,000 handwritten toe tags, what happens if we ask you to come and spend half an hour filling out the names of the dead and that information and then mounting on this wall? We want people to connect with this issue in a kind of more personal way through that experience.
Yeah.
And we hope that it's through that, and then they will get a different kind of take on this whole thing and then decide what to do with that information.
But let's say someone's listening to you right now and they're like, yeah, I would like to be involved. What are the things that someone could do to help this situation?
I think just getting more educated, just learning about stuff. I mean, there are organizations that you can support, you can donate to that are doing various kinds of things, but they can vote. They can start with local level kind of politics, but then also finding ways to support immigrants in their community, right? There's no community in the United States that doesn't have immigrants in it. And so figuring out ways to support folks, I think, at that level is maybe what most people can actually do.
Yeah. I'm just now remembering I had a LA geography class here at UCLA where they talked about that 50% of all second generation Mexicans were middle class, and that they are very much like the best embodiment of the American dream. If you look at the data, like it's not at all in any way some kind of big drain, or that it's generally works.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so you're talking about something that frustrated me ultimately with majoring in anthropology. I'm so sorry, but I'm going to say the thing that I found at the end of 4 years to be frustrating was you learned about all these people. You're told this concept of cultural relativity, and I definitely see the merits of cultural relativity, which is you really can't learn about anybody if you start with some judgment, or your goal is to make a judgment or some moral claim on what's happening, that clouds your ability to actually understand what forces are causing, say, infanticide in Inuits, right? That's like our most provocative thing we like to study in an anthro class. But at the end of the whole thing, I thought, okay, here's this vast knowledge, and now what? What is the application of it? Like, I understood the purpose, but I have to say at some point I was like, no, female circumcision, no. I understand now all the elements that are leading to this thing. I think I put away my judgment long enough to understand why it's happening, but I can pretty much conclude now it is misogyny at the end of the day. I was frustrated with the application of anthropology. Is that still the case, or did I misunderstand how it was applied?
Well, I think for a long time, we're making knowledge for the sake of making knowledge, and then it just lives in the ivory tower kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right? And anthropology, I think, is making this shift now towards being more public and more engaged, and basically figuring out, look, the world's on fire. We're experts in a lot of different things, whether it's immigration, race, gender, and why are we not the people on CNN talking about these things? Why are we not, the public voice for these kinds of causes? And I think people now are starting to really appreciate that in a much kind of deeper way. And so, how do I take my work out of a journal article and put it into some other context so that people can actually learn something and be able to appreciate what it is anthropologists do, but then also take that knowledge then and then go out and try to make a difference.
Yeah,
in the world.
weaponize it in a good way in some way. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to ask you a provocative question. I think I'm starting to realize I've overreacted on an issue that makes the rounds, and it's about universities. I think I'm one of these people that probably overreacted. It's like, oh, well, universities have gone to shit. You can't even, have debate now. It has to be one approved message, and that's that. Am I inflating that? You've now spent, I don't know, the last 10 years educating at 3 different colleges, lecturing at UW and then U of M and then now here. Has there been a change since we went to college, or is it inflated?
You mean in terms of like censorship?
Yeah.
I've never really experienced it. I mean, the censorship thing, but I think I have experienced the pushback about, here's this liberal brown professor who's going on some tirade about politics. I got that a lot at the University of Michigan. I taught the 101 course there for many years, which is 450 mostly non-majors who were taking it for a general ed requirement.
To see boobs and some photos.
And then they're like, well, and they show up and then they're like, well, he's just showing videos of like the police shooting civilians, he's like, this is not fun. And me being like, this is what the world looks like. A lot of students in that class pushing back and being like, this person's getting on his high horse about politics. And I'm like, human rights for me is not a partisan issue. Like, if there are injustices in the world, I want you to understand that and think about it anthropologically. And so I was getting pushback from students there about, they just didn't like the flavor of the anthropology that I was pitching. It wasn't Indiana Jones, it was, Trayvon Martin.
Right.
And that was not sitting well with a lot of folks.
So what was your anthropological take on Trayvon Martin?
Well, just getting people to think about the different kinds of experiences that certain people have about the world.
Yeah.
And how, I do this, I show students like a video with black parents talking to their kids about the police, and as part of like, this is how culture is learned and shared. And these are conversations that have to happen in a household about what the world looks like. And students just being really uncomfortable with some of that stuff. I came here, to see boobs, and other stuff. And this is a real bummer.
Yeah. Maybe the extended necks or something.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm like that. Like I tell them in the beginning, like that's not what you're going to get here.
Right.
But then they're like, well, I'm stuck. This is a GE. You know, it's kind of an easy course. Like I got to show up and listen to this like rambling, left leaning professor kind of thing. And I'm like, tough shit, man.
Was there any pressure from upstairs? Like, did students complain, and then you were pulled aside and said, like, hey, lighten up a little bit?
No.
Okay, so I'm probably overreacting. Everything's fine, and discourse is still encouraged in academia, and everything's good?
I think for the most part.
Okay, good. That makes me feel better.
I live in a bubble, though, too, so...
Yeah. You told me you're barely here, right?
Yeah,
that's great. Stay tuned for more live show after this exciting commercial break. Okay, now I wanted to talk to you about something that we probably could all relate to, which is we live in a very unique time period where since, 95 onward, for 25 years, the archaeological record exists in such detail where we're uploading every bit of information about ourselves onto the internet. It will live forever. And I want to hear your thoughts on what a phenomena that like there's no mystery anymore. We're seeing a lot of people that are being tried for crimes that happened in 1990 per se. And I think it's really interesting that it used to be, let's say that this technology existed in the 50s, that this record had been accumulating since the 50s. We would very easily be able to go online and see some gentleman, probably 4 drinks in front of a hospital, smoking a cigarette, putting a newborn into the back of a car with no seatbelts, and then driving them home. And you would go, this is alarming. Yeah. What we tend to do in anthropology is we try to look at like, what's the culture of that situation? What is the totality of that environment and that era and that time in space? But now we're in this interesting position where we can witness people real time doing things from different eras.
Sure.
We know what's culturally right and wrong now. We're clear on that. And then we're observing people do things that is blatantly terrible today, yet it wasn't terrible then.
Sure.
It's very complicated, no?
I will say that I'm glad that the internet really wasn't around when we were in college.
Oh, truthfully.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we wouldn't be sitting up here.
That's right. That's right.
I always think about it this way. Anything I'm saying now or doing right now is going to look so stupid in 20, 50 years. And so all I can do is try to do the best that I can in this moment and know that I will be judged by history later on. I guess it depends on what I mean, there are some things that I can look back on and go, those were the days. And then other stuff you're like, that shit was problematic then and it's problematic now.
100%. But the bottom line is now it can be observed. It just couldn't be observed. Yeah. And now it's like...
you mean people doing it like right now in real time?
No, like someone finding a photo of somebody in 1988. The very famous case that just happened recently was like someone in blackface.
Oh, yeah.
Which, let me be very clear, I'm against blackface. Yeah. You know, you start going back far enough and you're like, oh, well, that was on television at one point. That was in popular movies at one point. There's all this disturbing stuff that we have to kind of confront that like... And I'm just not sure if any of us know where we draw those lines. I mean, there is an archaeological view of it, which is like, I'm uncovering stuff, and it's from a bygone era, but it's the person's still alive. That's interesting.
Well, I think I judge those instances on how does that person react to it right now. Like, it wasn't me. You know, the kind of like Shaggy thing. Like, it's not. You know, and they're like, there's like 6 different photos. Yeah, and no, I'm thinking like Boombastic. Like, it wasn't me. Like,
that's Shaggy. I was right there, though, to do Scooby for you if you needed it. Raggy, you're in blackface. Okay, it wasn't me. Yeah.
But I mean, it's part of like, are people owning that stuff?
Yeah.
Or are they getting really defensive about things that you shouldn't be defensive about? You should just be like, I'm a fucking idiot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You know?
Yeah. Now, as I started with the punk rock thing, because I do believe that we were kind of drawn to there's some kind of anti-establishment punk rock vibe to anthropology, which I fucking love. Does it ever boggle you that, like, here you and I are sitting, we're the fucking establishment. I'm 45, you're what, 42?
Yep.
42. You're a professor at a world-renowned college. I'm on TV telling people what dishwashers to buy. I hope you'll buy Samsungs. How weird is that?
Yeah. No, completely.
I'm confronted by the fact of like, God, I want to be able to talk to who I was at 20, and I know damn well they wouldn't listen.
Yeah.
And so it's just a very interesting place to find yourself. When you're teaching kids, do you feel a chasm, or do you feel very much like I do? Like I still feel like I'm 20, delusionally so.
Oh, I'm totally delusional about the whole thing. Like, and I'm like, I think that I'm in my 20s, and and of course, my cultural references are all off. I mean, I've like
Shaggy.
But yeah, I mean, they're just like.
And then I went even further back with Scooby-Doo.
Oh yeah. But I will say that the one thing about anthropology, and I'm teaching a class right now called the Anthropology of LA, which I hope you'll come and.
Yeah, I would love to.
And talk to these kids.
Yeah.
I tell them like, look, I was a super fuck up weirdo, and anthropology is this tribe that collects weirdos, and I think on some level I can connect with them in that sense. And I tell them, look, I was a dropout, total screw up in all kinds of different ways. So I think I'm really open about my past. I hope as a way to connect with them, even though there's this age gap.
Yeah,
but maybe they can see themselves a little bit in me, like in the future. That's what I want them to be able to see, and then I definitely see myself in a lot of those students.
Yeah. Now, to me, like when I went, this will piss off a lot of students here currently, but when I went, it was $3,800 for the year. I didn't live on campus. $3,800. Isn't it just getting so unattainable for everyone? But it does seem that the line is going like this, right? It's just what's the end, and how does it get wrangled? As an archaeologist who studies migration, please tell me how to drop the price of college tuition.
I think some institutions are committed to financial aid, to getting, they recognize that the students that they want to get can't afford it, and so they're trying to find ways to do that. And then there are the students who will pay all this money that then can oftentimes fuel some of these other programs.
I have a solution.
What's your solution?
Because I went to school in Georgia, and there was I was waiting for some claps.
It's good
They
school.
didn't
It's not
come.
UCLA, but it's a good school. Anyways, go ahead.
There's a Hope Scholarship Program there that is paid for by the state lottery. So if you have a certain GPA or over, you get free tuition, which is what I got.
Even though your parents were loaded.
Well, even though. Yeah, so states can start doing programs like that to make college cheaper for people.
Okay, well, I guess my last curiosity is if I didn't get as lucky as I got and got to do this thing, I love comedy and chatting to people and all this wonderful stuff. The only other lifestyle I totally fantasize about is yours. Like, I think just never leaving the world of academia sounds heavenly. I was never happier than just coming here 4 days a week and having someone explain something to me like I was 5. I loved it. Is the job what you had thought it was going to be? Is it better? Is it worse? It was worse.
Yeah.
Let me just fill in. That pause only means one thing.
Post tenure, a different kind of work. So you become, you're just involved with a lot more service. I, should have gotten a PhD in email. 'Cause I think that's really what I spend a lot of my time doing. But at the same time, the flexibility. I can study whatever the hell I want. I can get money to go to some new place and think about some new idea.
Yeah.
I love that, and I love working with students. Really mentoring students, seeing them develop for me is a super fulfilling thing.
Yeah. I mean, there's migration issues everywhere, right? All over the globe. Is there anything that you're doing here that is applicable to other areas? And is there any kind of synthesis between other problem areas and the work you're doing?
Well, with the show Hostile Terrain 94, we're in 150 locations around the globe, and we're doing a whole bunch of shows in the Mediterranean, in Europe, in Africa, and working with refugees and migrants in those locations to build this wall map of Arizona deaths as a way to kind of stand in solidarity with migrants around the globe. And so we're trying to find ways to branch out so that we're connecting with this issue. Because, I mean, for me, America, we tend to think about immigration as like our problem kind of thing, you know, and it's like, well, it's a global crisis. And it's only getting worse. And we need to see that all the stuff that's happening, climate change as a driving force in migration that's happening in Latin America, in Africa.
How so? Like water sources are drying
droughts,
up, or droughts?
More extreme weather, so typhoons, hurricanes. We're starting to see increases in these like climate catastrophes that then force people to have to out-migrate. And this has been going on for decades already. Hurricane Mitch in Honduras devastates Honduras in the late 90s, and people have to out-migrate to the United States. And it's only happening now on a higher level.
Yeah. Well, look, it's mind-blowing to me that you've become a really valued member of our society. Truthfully, I'm sure on some level you think the same about me.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell them the motorcycle? Before we go, do you want to regale them with our motorcycle experience?
Go ahead.
The Lakers won the championship. 2000. We were celebrating dangerously.
Dax likes to drive fast all the time, but we decide,
Let's do some motorcycling.
down like Santa Monica Boulevard at like 3 o'clock in the morning.
Sure.
I remember like we're going like 90 miles, 100 miles an hour.
We were probably obeying the posted speed limit, but yeah, we were on a motorcycle.
And I remember I think I was just whispering in your ear like, can't this thing go any faster?
Challenge accepted.
And so cop sees us, and then we're like, oh shit, there's a cop behind us. And I said, don't worry, I know exactly where we are. I know Long Beach like the back of my hand. I'm like,
We're in Marina Del Rey.
Yeah. I'm like, go left and then go right and then make another left. And so we're like down these alleys and this cop is chasing us. And then I'm like, oh, this is our getaway right
What's
here.
the statute of limitations on this type of thing? Hopefully 20 years.
And we turn this corner where I think we're gonna like be free and clear, and it's just a garage door. And so we slow down and
Crash.
throw the bike, run.
Like Scooby-Doo behind a bush.
Like, get behind the bush. And so we go behind this bush. We're hiding behind this giant bush. And of course, the bush is only like 3 feet tall, so you can see Dax's head over the bush. I'm hunched down. We both have these helmets on. And this cop pulls up and puts the lights on us, and he's just like on his microphone, like, I can see you behind the bushes. I can like come out from behind the bushes. And so we like kind of come out from behind the bushes. And this cop is like, what the fuck are you guys doing? And Dax goes, officer, I didn't really know how fast I was going. It was a total mistake. I drive for a living, so my license is really important, you know, and I'll never do it again. And I just turned to this cop and I said, look, the Lakers haven't won a championship since 1988. They won tonight, and we are celebrating, and we got really carried away, and I'm so sorry. And the guy looks at us and is like, you guys are fucking idiots. Get on your busted bike and go home.
Wow.
And so we just walked
And
away.
we made it. And we're here.
You did it.
Don't do what we did, but do what Jason does. Jason DeLeon, I'm so impressed with what you've dedicated your life to, and I think you're so helpful. So you did it. UCLA, thank you guys so much. I said it when I did the commencement speech, but I started crying while I was trying to say it, so I'll attempt it again here. There's nothing in my life I feel prouder about than having gone to this school. So thank you guys.
And now my favorite part of the show, the fact check with my soulmate, Monica Padman. Did you ever drink Jolt Cola?
Joel Cola.
Yeah, Jolt Cola.
Oh, Jolt.
Yeah.
No.
Too young.
Yeah, that was before my time.
Yes, I feel like I was in junior high. Jolt hit the scene. It was like all the caffeine and twice the sugar or something. It had some crazy like declaration in the product title.
And that was a sell.
Mm-hmm.
I know. Things have changed.
Young people were like, yeah. Well, I don't know. This whole energy drink thing seems to be the same thing. Like too much energy.
That's true. But nobody wants sugar now. Like,
That's
ooh,
true.
that's not great.
That's true. Maybe it was all the sugar and twice the caffeine.
Oh, boy.
They did a little dance with, hey, Google, what was Jolt's Cola's slogan?
All the sugar and twice the caffeine.
Oh! Wow.
Yeah.
It's so nice when she like confirms.
Yes, it is. It feels great.
She's so cute today.
Oh, she really is. I just love that she's having an affair with that microphone.
Yeah. Well, they're not having an affair. They can be having a real relationship.
Oh, yeah. They're in a committed relationship.
Yeah, they're committed.
They are. Although
I mean,
that same microphone plays patty cake with you all the time.
Well, but I'm not interested in that microphone. So
It's all plutonic.
yeah, that's right. I would never encroach on her.
No, she's so defenseless.
She's
Look how
kind of like
tiny-
eye packs.
I am the eye. Yes, I'm
yeah,
gonna. Have
if I sat on her, I would feel sad.
Wouldn't you? Because she's so defenseless.
Yeah, poor girl.
Poor little girl. Hey Google, are you defenseless?
Huh. I can't tell.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, I like that she
It's
wasn't
humble.
too proud. You know.
Jason DeLeon. This is what I was thinking about when I was reading about him. He has an accent over one of the letters in his name, in the Leon part, like maybe over the E or the O.
Oh, okay.
And I was,
The León.
how do you put an accent on things when you're texting? Or
No, if you hold down the letter, well,
Yeah.
on iPhones, look, I don't know how Samsungs work,
Yeah,
but
you wouldn't.
if you hold down on the letter, all of them pop up and you can click
Oh,
it. Yeah.
on any letter.
Well, on the letters that have them, like N-E, P-P,
Are there some letters that you can't put an accent on,
Let
like
me
a
look.
T?
like a W maybe?
Yeah, I've never seen a fucking accent on a W.
Yeah, there's nothing when I click W or M.
Ooh,
But look at E. Look what pops up when I do E.
a smorgasbord.
So
of,
many.
Okay. Well, thank you. I learned something today.
You're welcome. Another memory lane for you.
Absolutely.
Fun. I love that you guys were fuck ups and now you're not.
That was probably my favorite takeaway as well.
Yeah.
It's just like, yeah, if there had been a poll in the middle of class, they'd have been like, these two aren't going to make it. Like, even to graduation, much less in life.
It's inspiring.
I can't put too fine a point on how much he drank in college.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I think he drank more than I did.
Well, he said it. I think he was like laughing, but also seemed serious. You were like, I can't be around you.
No. Well,
I think he was saying that you said that.
There were moments where I was like, I can't go with you guys to the bar. Like, I can be friends, but I can't. Although there's very little recreational activity with him when we were friends that didn't involve drinking. So, yeah, there probably was. Yeah, and I just thought, it's weird, as I said on stage, it was weird to me that he had zero concern about it.
Yeah.
And it improved to be an issue for him.
Yeah. Well, some people aren't addicts.
That's right. Even though, like, if you just looked at his consumption, you probably would have concluded that he was an addict. I don't think he was.
Well, this has come up in our lives with people around us.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is a distinction between somebody who's an addict
Yeah.
and has truly no control
Yep.
over somebody who is choosing to be out of control.
Yeah.
And they might choose that a lot of days. And so from the outside, it looks the same, but they still are in control of it, you know?
Yep. Yeah.
And I don't think you are.
No.
Yeah.
No.
But it's
As soon as I have one drink, the playbook is out the window. And I had to prove that to myself over 1,000 times. Like, I know I'm smart enough to have a good enough fucking plan. I'm going to have 2 drinks, and then I'm going to stand up and leave there.
Yeah.
And just could not do that.
Even someone who's not an addict, that can be hard. Once you're in it,
Right, because you have a different brain working.
yeah, there's something else happening. You're having fun.
Well, your frontal lobe, it gets diminished.
Yeah.
So your ability to weigh the future versus the present gets diminished.
Yeah. Can I tell you something?
Yeah.
You might not like, or I don't know if you will. But when you had toe surgery,
Oh, okay.
and I was with you for a couple days during that time, so I was the one who was in charge of administering your medicine,
Yes.
giving you your painkiller.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I really saw. I mean, no, like at 2:00 on the dot,
Yeah.
you'd be like, okay, it's time.
Yep.
And we'd be doing stuff. We'd be like watching TV or
Yeah.
in the middle of a conversation. You were occupied, but you were always thinking about it.
Oh, yes. Yes.
And
It's
it was like
almost
on
worse.
the dot.
Mm-hmm.
And it scared me.
In many ways, because guys share about it all the time in meetings, like, you have surgery and you need pain pills. And the consistent kind of takeaway is like, it'd probably be easier without them in many ways because you are so preoccupied with it, or I am so preoccupied with it, which is why I don't get the medicine and you or Kristen get the medicine, that there's no enjoyment of it because you're just like, oh, I can't have the amount I want, which is all of them. And so it's almost whatever pain it's treating, which it does, coupled with this anxiety about not being able to do it the way you want to. So that's its own pain, and it's almost probably neutral.
Yeah.
Did Did you think in your head, ooh, gross?
No, I thought, I just thought, wow, this is so real. And I think there were a few other instances in life that I had that thought about you and just about addiction in general. And it's in moments like that that I know I'm not.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
100%.
I don't have that. I don't have this preoccupation
Yes.
with substances. And so even though I like alcohol, but it doesn't control me.
Yeah, you're not someplace and then we're going to go somewhere else. Your first thought isn't, is there more alcohol there?
No.
I wouldn't even leave a place that had alcohol unless I knew where we were going was going to have this same amount or more. I would never do it.
Yeah.
It's the first thing I would think about. Not like, oh, that'll be fun over there or this or that. It's just like, will they have alcohol there?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a little bit hard because if I'm already drinking, let's say I was at a bar or something and I had a couple drinks and I was liking it.
Feeling nice.
And then I wanted to go, we were going to like Ryan and Amy's. I might be like, should we get wine on the way? Like, I would have some element of that. Mm-hmm. Again, the line is so blurry as to when it transitions into a true
obsession.
Obsession and problem. And
yeah, the times I've had painkillers in sobriety, there is no moment in that where I'm not thinking about the painkillers. Even if I'm talking to you and I'm super distracted by something, I'm way more conscious of like when the next one's coming than anything else. Yeah.
It scares me. It just does. It's scary. And I think if other people are around addicts, it's scary. Like there's a very real fear that you carry. And it's sort of back to the episode we talked about earlier where, last week or whatever, the last episode we did about drinking around addicts or smoking around addicts or whatever. I think part of it is, why would you do that? Because already you're living with fear that that person is going to wreck their life and yours, but theirs, and you care about their life so much.
Yeah.
It can be intense.
I'm trying to think if I ever partied with someone that scared me. Like I've gone and ridden motorcycles with people and it scares me and I don't enjoy riding with them because I'm nervous they're going to crash and die.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to do it and it's scary. But I'm trying to think if I've ever partied with anyone where I was like, oh, this person's going to die. Mm-hmm. And I don't think I've had that feeling ever.
Okay, so you said a whole thing about Pacific Islanders rowing.
Oh, yeah. That the people that got to Tonga and Samoa had rowed from, I said the Philippines because it was convenient, but I think it was Malaysia is what I really learned.
Right, but then they said in the moment that wasn't true. Somebody shouted that out.
Someone did, yeah, but I don't.
And I couldn't find it.
I was more happy that there was just a total look of puzzlement on Jason's face, who's a professor in anthropology. So it wasn't like he said, like, no, that's wrong because it's this. I was just relieved, like, oh, I don't think he knows.
If it was something that everyone in anthropology knew, he would definitely know.
You'd have to be on whatever class that was talking about migrating populations.
Well, he would definitely know about that.
Well, in South and Latin America.
But he probably has done a lot. I mean, he's been in all the classes.
Yeah, but he had no theory on how the Tongans got there.
Yeah, but I think having no theory is probably better than having a made-up theory.
No, but it might not made up. I learned that. You think I just made that up?
I think you're confused. Yeah, I think you're confused.
I don't.
Okay.
No, I 1,000% still believe what I learned.
All right. Well, you can find it out. And
you'd have
bring
to
it
explain
back.
why they're inordinately larger than everyone else in another way.
All right. Find out and come bring your old textbook and return.
Okay.
Okay.
It does make me think of, we talked about the thought experiment. Was there one other thing that someone just...
No, but people were mad at me for Nixon because Nixon did not get impeached.
Okay. Right. He
and
resigned.
I said he did.
Right.
So he did resign. I knew he resigned, but I thought he resigned after he got impeached, before he got
Convicted by the Senate?
correct.
Okay.
But really it was before.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we cleared that up.
Okay, that's clear. Yeah. Okay, you said California is the 5th biggest economy in the world. It's the 6th.
Because Mayor Garcetti said that L.A. in itself, just L.A. was the 6th biggest.
California now has the world's 5th largest economy. That was CBS News 2018. This one that pops up which is on Wikipedia, economy of California. The economy of California is the largest in the United States, boasting if California were a sovereign nation 2020. So that's new.
Okay.
It would rank as the world's 6th largest economy, ahead of the UK and behind India.
Okay.
That's what it says here. Okay, so some conflicting information. 5th or 6th?
Big economy. Big economy.
Really big. I'm proud of it.
Me too.
That's all.
That was it?
Yeah, not very many facts with dear old Jason.
Interesting, considering it was an
León.
expert.
Yeah, I know. That's the way it works with these experts. But I love what he's doing.
Me too.
He was really cool.
I mean, I was aware of what he was doing. I was not aware of how dark it is.
Yeah.
Like,
of course it is.
Trying to figure out what the identity of this dead body and children and the whole thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
parents who are missing children and
the whole endeavor is just suffering. That's what he's studying. He's studying the suffering of millions of people.
yeah, I know.
Ooh, that's rough.
It is.
I'm glad
I'm
he
glad
does that.
somebody does it. Yeah.
That's how I always feel when I'm like visiting someone in the hospital. The nurses, I'm like, oh my God, the job. It's like there's so much poop and pee and blood and just the people make a mess of those beds.
Yeah.
And they have like this great attitude and they're fucking doing it. I'm always overwhelmed with like, what a job. I'm
think
so
we could
grateful there are
learn-
people that are up for that.
Do you think we could learn that mentality or you're born with it?
Phew, man. I mean, I would really need to be putting food on the table for my kids to work there or in like a geriatric facility.
Yeah.
I mean, just dealing with other humans' poop is,
It's rough.
I'm just so grateful some people are up for it.
I agree. God.
But
Yeah.
some people don't seem to care. Like Carly's a little that way. My sister, like,
yeah.
zits and stuff. She'll watch these zip popping videos.
Yeah, people really like those, but that's like they're getting a weird sapisaction
Like
out
a
of
kink.
it. Yeah, I don't think that's the same as like the poop and puke cleaning.
Okay. The P&P. The 3 Ps. Piddle, poo poo, and puke. All right. Well, I love you. And I love Jason DeLeon. I'm so happy that he's so successful in educating young minds. What a great person to do that.
I love that.
Yeah. All right. Love you.
Bye.